Hey there, tomato heads. Lauren here, Mrs. Tomato Head. Thank you for being here on a Tuesday. I am in a change of location today. I am in Florida at my parents' winter home, and which is a great way to. Today's topic is going to be on winter storage tomatoes, otherwise known as Longkeepers. And there's all kinds of categories in there. There's piennolo, excuse me, piennolo varieties, which are the Italian hanging varieties. In Spain, they call them Ramlet, I believe, tomatoes, and Colgar, Penjar. So I have an amazing guest that's going to come on. His name is Evan Gregoire from Heirloom Seedhouse. He is in my group, Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap, which I will show you in a minute. It's on Facebook. If you're not a member, we would love to have you. Here we go. Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap on Facebook. Kind, generous people. A few months ago, we had a member, Kit Linderoth, our moderator, Kina's mom, shared about Longkeeper tomatoes. And she shared how she hangs them. Actually, let me pull it up real quick. She did this awesome post sharing how she hangs them. I think I have it pulled up. Yeah. And we were all in the group. We were all like, whoa, you know, many of us had seen this before, but the way she shared it was just like, what is going on here? That's her video she shared in the group. And then this show, oops. She shared this photo of these winter storage tomatoes that she's hanging. And it seems like so much of the group has become obsessed, including me. I first found Evan from Heirloom Seedhouse because I was looking for Longkeeper varieties. He has incredible knowledge and incredible selection. It's portlandseedhouse.com. I'll be sharing it a few times. Yes, portlandseedhouse.com. He is in our group and offered to come on and talk to us and even show us some Longkeeper winter storage tomatoes, which I'm super excited about. If it's your first time joining me, or this show or the show I do with Jen Joy, Tomato Talk Live, the first Friday of the month, this is an interactive broadcast, and I love sharing comments and questions right on the screen. Hello, Malachite Jen, glad you're here. I'll try to get up to all your questions because I know I have a lot, and I know so many of you do too. So let's bring them on. Introducing Evan Gregoire from Heirloom Seedhouse. Hey, Evan.
Hi, Lauren. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for being here with us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me. We have a lot to talk about for storage tomatoes. I feel like there's a ton of interest in the community, and always has been. Anywhere I bring any of these varieties, they're just super interesting.
I think for me, I knew about Principe Borghese. I'm sure I'm brutalizing the pronunciation of that, or Reverend Morrow's Longkeeper. I knew of them. I think I grew Principe Borghese and was underwhelmed, but later on finding out they're not really meant for just picking off the vine and eating fresh at the time, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean the Principe are probably even more so of a drying variety, where you kind of have to think back to culturally how they're used traditionally. And so I think that's the biggest thing, and kind of one of the things we're going to talk about today is some of the different tip varieties. Like Piennolo de Vesuvio is kind of a cousin to the Principe Borghese, but it depends regionally where they're from, and like I said, what they were used for. And so the Borgo, Solano, and the Principe Borghese traditionally are more of a drying, so that they're probably going to be used in a Mediterranean climate where they're going to be actually dried rather more quickly because they have a thicker skin, versus the Piennolo del Vesuvio basically has a little thinner skin, so they can be eaten a little more fresh, and generally used to kind of spread on toast and do things like that later on in the season. Those are more of your like 2 to 3 month storage time on your certain types of Longkeepers. And so what it comes down to is they all have different types of long shelf life phenotypes in them. And so there's different things in tomatoes that make them obviously, have these things. And so you have your different mutations and things like that have had different things, like the Portuguese tomatoes have a certain type of mutation, but these ones kind of have a long shelf life phenotype, as well as like a delayed fruit deterioration. So what that is like,
you're saying something. Is it Pinot fruit type? Is that what you said, or piennolo?
the piennolo.
Which
Yeah.
means
So, the
hanging,
phenotype.
correct?
So the
Piennolo means
phenotype.
hanging?
Yeah. So long shelf life phenotype is essentially something that is in these tomatoes, and you'll see that have a genetic selection through thousands of years. And so that essentially, that long shelf life phenotype is in these tomatoes, and it has that ability to do that. And so I think you'll see that kind of show up in certain tomatoes, like the Reverend Moros and things that may have been other tomatoes in other times too. So when doing my traveling, Spain, Portugal, Italy, they have a lot of these very long storage type tomatoes that have these, they're basically ethylene gas receptors that are turned off. They're basically not, basically going to produce their own ethylene gas within their own tomato to ripen. And so when you see a faster ripening tomato, there's more ethylene gas buildup that's very quick. And so it's ripening very quickly. And so a lot of people are looking for, market tomatoes that are going to withstand a little bit. And you'll see that they have, certain things that are, just a lot more ethylene gas production in those. And so these tomatoes have it actually don't exist. And so they're going to be ripening over a very short or a very long period of time. The 2 to 3 month are going to be those Piennolo de Vesuvio, the Piennolo Giallo. And there's also a lot of other regional varieties of those, because when you go to Italy, you'll find 10 different regional varieties of almost the same tomato. And so there are very small differences in those tomatoes when you see them growing out. Some of them have longer tips, green shoulders.
I was given some from a member in Spain, and they were seemed very local to different villages and things like that. So I forget some of the names offhand, but it's not something you can find information on the internet because they were so local.
So the best resource on the internet I've found to some of the Longkeepers is the Slow Food website. It's the Slow Food Architace. Yeah, the Slow Food Architace website has some of these in there. The Piennolos are in there. The Canetore, which is I think it's called Regina Canetore, which is like the queen of Canetore. And so
all of these can be found, or the ones Evan has mentioned. Many of them can be found on his website,
and some we still need to find. That's all. That's a whole other thing. And that's what I really like to do, is the exploration. And we're such a global society these days that we have a lot of friends in other places, as I do with some of these farms and other people that have donated, and we've basically shared resources and seeds to be able to. I always bring seeds when I'm going to another country. I know you're not supposed to. Don't tell anybody. But, you always should, because then you can trade other people that you meet with other seeds. And I feel like
I brought baggies with me when I went to Italy in case I wanted to smuggle some seeds back. I didn't end up doing that, but always. And
you can always get from seed trading. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are always. There's always like Brown. I had a couple emails about do you test for this and do you test for this, and I think at some point maybe we will start doing some testing for these. I don't think you see anything show up. We have very, very extensive practices for just keeping disease management and things like that. So I think if you're using a lot of bioactivity, we use a lot of different things that are in kind of Jadam, Korean gardening methods, by using our own like leaf molds and stuff like that. And so I experiment with a lot of things that are kind of out of those practices, and then also a lot of other things that are on kind of activating compost teas, activated compost teas, and things like that we use throughout the garden all year. And it's just really interesting to just try to experiment with different things. Tomatoes don't like as much as you would always think, though. I tend to use that stuff on even some of the other stuff, and it tends to respond a little bit better. Okay. Or using it just to kind of like wake up your soil a little bit, too. So
On
Tomatoes, I
your
feel like,
website, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to share on your website, Evan is an educator as well, a farmer, and he's very passionate about this, as am I, which is, makes for a great time talking to you all. But how did you get started in all this? I know you mentioned, your ancestry, but how did you get started in tomatoes and the varieties that you carry?
yeah, so we have a small, our seed company is basically part of our larger farm, so to speak. I lease land, and I lease a farm here in Portland, Oregon, and the Portland Seed House is our kind of our name that we've been known for around here. And I kind of adopted the Heirloom Seedhouse as kind of my seed name a bunch of years later, just to have kind of a differentiation between the two. You can reach our website on both of those. But we do a lot of interesting culinary. So I kind of call myself like a culinary farm artist, or whatever you want to call, where I do a lot of culinary relationship building with our chef community here in Portland. And that is directed to some of the best restaurants in Portland.
There's some really great restaurants in Portland, aren't there?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Con, for instance, Republica, who we provide with some of the best of these tomatoes too. So I'm not growing necessarily for seed particularly. I'm growing for culinary value within my community of chefs, and that happens to be what I like and what they like. And so these are kind of very value-oriented tomatoes for culinary purposes. And that's the other crops too as well. So anything on my website is directed into our market garden. And then we separate our market garden into pieces that we do our seed saving from. So I feel like I'm one of the only, seed company and market garden farms in the company that has, market. We do farmers markets in Portland as well. So our public access and direct to consumer is through our farmers markets and our seed company online. But a lot of that, really, great product is going to some of the best chefs, the most amazing, talented chefs in Portland. And so I feel, honored to work with some of them. And we have some really interesting projects going on this year to produce more types of seed and different types of quality seed. So we're going to be working on that project, and we'll have a little bit more information about that later. And then as well as possibly our first rooftop garden project with, and so those work in collaboration with other chefs and
Nice.
people that in town. So we do kind of these installations of gardens, onto already surfaces that are there or already pre-existing. So everything's already there. And I mean, it's amazing when somebody has the eco roof already installed, on your roof. You just put a little more soil in there and you put
Cool.
more stuff on there. So yeah, I do a lot of different things, but I think the seed company is just definitely a great offshoot of some of the most amazing tomatoes that are produced for that I found on my trips to Italy, specifically in 2014 and 2018.
So that's how you first encountered these tomatoes, is on a trip to Italy.
Yeah, I was a slow food delegate in 2014 and 2018 for from Slow Food Portland and Slow Food International. Basically, you go to this Tierra Madre, which is this amazing conference that has all of like Italy's providers, as well as another stadium full of a lot of the world's providers. And then I started to travel after that, after both occasions, and then basically stay with different farms and different basically purveyors that would basically grow a lot of these very endangered, protected arc of taste varieties. And so and I started to trade and collect some of these things, and then really was able to kind of access some of these underground networks, so to speak, because these aren't networks that are above ground. So because you see a lot of the seed police, so to speak, come down on a lot of people right now, in terms of the limiting of where they can send their seed, how they can sell their seed, who they can sell it to, what they can sell, and actually taking profits of their seed and anything that they've sold and their revenues, and really kind of locking down. And so I feel like it's kind of a call to arms to be like, all right, we need to protect seed completely. Right. And so that's in my ethos is really having seed stewardship be available to everybody, and breeding projects be available to just about anybody who can have fun in their backyard. And we used to be that way. I mean, our breeders used to be the ones that our grandparents that used to be, kind of most inspired by my grandfather and me and my grandmother, their garden. And that's kind of where, I came up from. And, that's, my Czechoslovakian side, and my dad's from Belgium and kind of a war torn side, so that he didn't have a lot of agriculture going on, but you always feel it in your blood at some point. You're like, okay, I was in, Brussels, somewhere up in the hills in 1700, like, I don't know, farming in, some type of vegetable,
right.
So, and I feel like that's just, you always have to find, where it comes from in your ancestry and what you like to collect, and so to speak. So that's where my European collection comes from, and my travels and collecting that, and really making friends with some of these dynamic farmers and people that have been doing things for generations and have already figured out what we, can just adapt into our systems here, into our farms and stuff too. And so, anyway,
I'm quite passionate about finding out where the seeds originate from and the breeder. I have this crazy spreadsheet I use for my inventory, my trades, and it will drive me nuts if I don't know who the breeder was and the origin of the seeds, and I will go to the ends of the earth. In fact, one of my first conversations with you is trying to find out information on a variety that you've since stopped carrying, if you remember.
I think that's what I've been talking to a bunch of people lately, and just really putting more information on my website, because I know people want that information too. And so just basically making sure to list all the breeders and other things like that. I think that's going to be one of my things that I get better at too. It's, when you're running a market farm and you're running, market gardens and all these different things, it's very hard to be like, okay, I need to put more time into doing video production and, editing of putting in all the descriptions and where everything's from. And so, but I think that's like a major task list of mine this year. I think because it's good to know where everything's from and know, where it came from and who, all the different things like that. So,
I'm showing some screenshots of his website now. As you can see, his
Canestrino. The Canestrino is a really neat one. That was from Lucca, which is kind of in the middle of Italy. It's probably the best sauce tomato, underrated sauce tomato. San Marzano is highly marketed, but this one has the best water to meat ratio. Just because it has a little bit more water than the San Marzano, but just enough that you want, like just 5% more, you know what I mean? Just a tad more than you would want for just kind of having a really robust sauce. People always say it tastes like you put the onions and garlic already in it, but
that sounds good.
That one's a good, it's not a storage tomato, but I feel like all the Italians tend to be fairly decent at having a good storage value. So you have like,
what exactly is a Longkeeper winter storage tomato? I mean, I know there's kind of a category for it, but how do you see it?
So the Italians and the Portuguese and the Spanish all have kind of categories within their own. I feel like, for me, I have the most knowledge with the Italian storage varieties because I know 8 to 10 of them specifically within different storage qualities. So you have a 2 to 3 month, a 3 to 4 month, and then a 4 month plus. And those are going to be the times that you need to eat them because that's traditionally when they're eaten, when they're processed, when they're used culturally and traditionally. And so that the piennolo del Vesuvio and the piennolo del Vesuvio Giallo and the Corberino and the Borghese Solano and Principe Borghese all fall in that kind of 2 to 3 month range. I tend to eat them a little bit sooner because I like to eat them a little more fresh. And that's usually, no later than, I don't know, November, like late. And it depends where you are regionally too. I think that's what a lot of people have to remember is these are all Mediterranean tomatoes. A lot of them with even a lot of volcanic and salinity influences from the coastal regions and stuff. So they're grown with a lot of different influences that have effects on the storability of your tomatoes too. So I'm in the Northwest, Portland, Vancouver, Oregon region, like right here. That's very moist, and we're 100% humidity for 9 months of the year, and then we go 100% dry for like 3 or 4 months. So we shift to this kind of Italian Tuscan climate for 3 months, and we can actually produce some of these wonderful varieties because we have zero rain. And I mean,
Interesting.
the climate change has been funny because we had July rain this year. I mean, I don't know, don't have those all the time, but for like 3 to 4 months we have zero rain, and so we have the ability to produce kind of that Italian mimicry when it comes to that latitude. If you look at kind of where your seeds are coming from, and when your seeds are going to be produced, you can kind of have an idea of what's going to happen when we're producing it here. So if I buy something from Wisconsin and I produce it here, they're a little colder, they're a different zone, but it might have a little bit of colder tolerance because it's from like a little shorter zone. So it might be okay, right? But if you buy something from San Diego, I don't know if it's going to do very well up here because their zone is completely different. They're temperate, it's just a totally different zone. So buying your seeds regionally, depending upon if you're in a colder region, so northernly zones, I feel like I like to buy a lot of seeds from the companies that are kind of in our upper zone here. And so Johnny's being another of them. If I'm going to produce any market farm seed, I think, Johnny's Seeds has a really nice production on some, like just, if you're going to get carrots. We don't do a lot of carrots here in our region just because we have a lot of things that'll just cross over really easily. So I'll buy them from Johnny, so to speak, and things like that. But
good to know. So generally, the tomatoes that you grow that have a long shelf life is typically a Longkeeper winter storage, but there's some that have more shelf life than others. And you said it's because of the water content and the lack of gas that speeds up ripening. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically the genes inside the tomato kind of control what's going to happen, right? And so the gene for long shelf life, it's a phenotype that basically has that ability to have not a lot of ethylene produced within itself to ripen itself. And so like when you see certain tomatoes, like the Portuguese tomatoes, they have a mutation in them that is basically kind of the same thing, and it doesn't allow them to basically produce enough of the same gases and things like that too. So I think some of these things that you find, they're going to be for specifically those genetic tomatoes that are in that thing. So I think that the Reverend Moros falls under that, and some of those other larger tomatoes too that you'll see. There's a laundry list of some of the larger ones. I think some of those probably are some of the more or less the Portuguese tomatoes. I haven't grown a lot of the larger ones. I focus on some of the smaller Italian types.
Right.
The Rosa de Benavento is really another wonderful one. Cane Torre, Crispiana. I have a couple of them. So these are.
Yeah, get ready, gang. He's got a bowl of them right here.
So these are your basic, your 3 to 4, 5, basically 4 to 5 month storage tomatoes. You have Crispiana, which they basically are harvested in September and are, you could eat these right now fresh. And I had one of my chefs actually just start to take these in to eat these, and she ate one in front of me, and I was like, okay, but they're essentially more, the longer keeper you get, the probably more you're going to be doing things where you're like spreading it on like bruschetta or something very in that side. This side's probably going to be more of your cooking type, the Crispiana. Your Rosa de Benavento, I mean, you could still eat these right now. They're really good. Definitely more in the, Italians are into their soups and stews and their things like that too. So we would probably do some cooking down with the majority of these. I don't think you're ever going to get a 5-month slicer, you know what I mean, in terms of storage type. But the Crispiana, in terms of using these, cooking down with them, they're great. We sheet pan these and put these in our garage, which until just recently was very cold, and so we've had to keep a little heater in there just to try to keep it to temperature.
What is the optimal temperature for storing them?
Probably around like 50 degrees, 55 degrees,
Okay.
Not too cold, but not too warm where you're folding, and then having a little bit of good circulation. They're still on their vine. I don't know if you can see them, but
Is that the optimal way to keep them, have them on the vine a bit?
Yeah, I mean, so the piennolos, they really like it when you cut them. These guys, the longer storage ones, I do sheet pan them because it's just a lot easier to have them on a sheet pan and basically away from anything. You can kind of keep dust off of them, and you can put them up um, in your garage somewhere, or in your house that's not too, because you don't want it too hot because they're going to ripen too quickly. You want it too cold because they're just gonna sit there and not really do anything. And you do want some ripening to happen. And I think that's the interesting thing about some of these, like the piennolos. They do a lot of the hanging in the eaves, and so you'll be in Italy, and then you'll have the trusses, and you'll see a lot of the trusses. And so essentially, when we do the harvest, we cut the full trusses. So you'll have a truss, and you'll cut it back here, kind of along the branch almost a little bit, and you'll have a little bit to hang on an actual yarn. And I'll put some of the pictures up in the group here later. I'll just go through and give you guys a little photo dump of some of the storage tomatoes and some of the hanging and some of the things that we've done.
Floppy wants to know, do you store them in the dark?
Preferably in a darker place. Yeah. I mean, if you look in Italy, it's interesting. I mean, it depends on your climate too. So in Italy, and you'll see them stored in the light. And so when we were walking down a couple of the streets in southern Italy, the Cane Torre and the Crispiana, you tend to see them hanging in the eaves, but it hasn't rained there in 5 months or something like that. So they just are desert-like and things like that. So again, geologically, depending on where you are, if you're in Arizona, yeah, you could probably get away with it. I mean, but you definitely get cold too, and you get a lot colder than somewhere, and it's way more tropical. So I know the guy in San Diego, he does a lot of later storage Vesuvios because they can get away with it down there in some of the temperate regions. And so that's what's nice about some of these too, is your cultural management. You definitely, low rainfall is good for them. We had a late rain this year in September, which was I think our climates are obviously fluctuating and doing what they're doing, and obviously they'll have a little bit more rain when you're not supposed to have rain. And so we got a very early rain in September that wouldn't stop. And I think I was like, where am I farming? Like Connecticut or something now? Or like, I'm like, I don't know where I am right now. And it was very humid, and we don't have hornworms. Like, we don't have certain things that are.
You don't?
I've never seen a hornworm in 20 years.
You are a lucky dog.
If someone wants to send me a hornworm, it'll just die right now. So anywhere where it's too cold, I guess they don't grow, right? They don't.
Interesting.
You can't hibernate.
So when would you? So I'm in New Jersey. Normally, I'm in New Jersey, which is 6B. We've got there's a reason why Jersey tomatoes are famous. We've got a great climate for growing tomatoes. Generally, I will plant out. I'll start seeds like March, April, and then plant out towards the end of May. And then we'll start harvesting some in July, really August, September. If you're going to grow a Longkeeper or winter storage tomato, and do you want to start your seeds later and then?
You can definitely. So this year we did experiment with we had 3 different growing times, in terms of, when we planted them out. And so I did feel like it depends again on your region too. So if you think about, a lot of these are planted in Italy, and they're planted, early, and they're harvested early because they have a lot of bug predation, they have a lot of disease, they have a lot of stuff. And so I think they tend to get them in and get them out, and then get them, up and, hanging and, out of the fields. And so, that's probably if you're near a hotter climate, that's more disease prevalent versus something that, if you have a lot of, our area, we have a nice 3-month zone where we can kind of do that, where we have, a lot of time before the rain happens, because you don't want to use a lot of blemished fruit. You're using a lot of stuff that has damage on it, and you're going to have a lot of mold and a lot of issues when it comes to storage. As best as possible, I've used, there definitely can have some cracking and some stuff on some of the hanging ones. But for instance, with the hanging ones, they have kind of their own truss stability, because some of the old time tomatoes have kind of handles already that haven't been developed yet. So pre-commercialized tomatoes have, essentially these handles that will snap off tomatoes essentially easily for picking. And some of the older tomatoes that you'll find don't have kind of the same, they have durability when it comes to that handle. And so they stay when you pick them, but you don't want to wait too long to actually start to put them up and do their little rosette. And so, 1 to 2 days tops after you cut them down, do you want to start building your truss, your pile of tomatoes up on your yarn? Usually using some like cotton hemp yarn or something like that is the best, because you can take that, and make that, because they're going to get too brittle, and when they get brittle, they'll start to break off if you start to manhandle those tomatoes. But they're pretty durable once you get them in kind of set up and completely in there, and then you leave it alone for a week. You can move them around from place to place, and from you just don't want to be swinging them around and things like that. But
do you optimally want to harvest them towards the end of the season? I guess that makes sense if you want it more into the winter.
No, so you want to get them off when you can. So depending upon your zone, if you can get them in and get them out, like I said, plant them whenever you can. Because this conversation can go to a lot of different people. If you're down obviously in San Diego, you have 2 different zones. And you're planting and way early, I think in January, and going till the heat hits you, and then you're stopping again, and then you're doing another winter tomato version. Up here, for us particularly, we're in zone 8B, and specifically we have a planting zone that we're starting tomatoes February, March, usually March on the later ones, in February if you want to start on some earlier ones, if you do have some ability to do some clotching, and then also depending on your year and how much space you have. So
right.
Because April 15th could mean it's still frozen outside here, but most of the time April 15th means we're getting there.
Okay.
And so that's our zone. And then I'm usually riding on that May 1st. I usually tend to plant around right around then. No later. I try to get the other ones in about Mother's Day. That's kind of always our rule of thumb around here.
Yeah,
potatoes on St. Patty's Day, and peas on Valentine's Day, and I kind of go by the holidays when I plant. So
yeah, it's easy to remember.
Yeah, it's easy to remember. I know if it's Valentine's Day and I haven't gotten the card for my partner and the peas in the ground, I'm in trouble. So.
Before we move on, I just want to tell you that I didn't realize my Mac was not plugged in. I've got low battery. It's now plugged in, but if I lose you, I'll be right back.
For sure.
Hopefully that won't happen.
So yeah, the growing conditions, I feel like, your question is answered by the cultural management and the growing conditions of those tomatoes. So if wherever you are, if you can create or have a more, quick way of putting them in and putting them out because you have more rain, that's going to be what you're going to look at for having an easier, mimicry of that, Italian, where it's coming from. I have some customers in Tracy that love my seeds and some of these Italian varieties, because Tracy, California is like 105 for, 4 months or whatever. And it really kicks. And so, they get them water and it's dry, and get them some good, soil and things like that. They have a really good, way to grow our tomatoes. So we get really hot as well. I mean, not really hot, but we'll hit 100 throughout the year a few times. And
you do get that hot, huh?
Yeah. So traditionally, I think we've been a little cooler up here, but over the last 10 years, we definitely we had that heat wave that was pretty crazy that went through. It was 120 that year and up here, and that was interesting. I've never seen like singeing, like it looked like you took a heat gun to plants, and so that was really interesting. But you had a lot of growth rate on stuff during those times too, because of the intensity of the sun and the intensity of the heat and everything kind of made everything explode. But a lot of these tomatoes, just really looking through, having your cultural growing conditions kind of, just if you plant when you're going to plant them, I would say, just so you can get that tomato out at that time, and then just being able to pull them. So, planting later is not necessarily, you're going to have a second set of fruit, or, depending where you are too. So if you only get one shot, at your crop, I don't know, before it rains, I would say just go on your normal planting cycle. But for us, like we stay dry, and I can get 1 pick, 2 picks, off, because these are kind of semi-indeterminate. And that's kind of an interesting thing. I feel like people don't really understand. People are always like, well, what are these? I'm like, well, they're semi-indeterminate. Like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, their internodes are longer, but they don't get as tall as an indeterminate. Like, they'll never get 20 feet tall, like ever.
Right.
Like, but they'll get 4 feet tall, and they'll have really long internode length tops, and they'll basically have really nice, truss production throughout that kind of 4 foot, but they'll slouch over. And I've had them growing in, where I've done weave, I've done, growing them on the ground on tarp and plastic or whatever poly, tarps and stuff we use. And I don't think it really matters either way, just because at least the piennolos, most of them have the same fashion of growth, where they're going to kind of have this 4 foot kind of slumpy growth, and you can trellis them up if you have a lot of disease too. And then dependent upon your zone too, if you have a lot of disease and rain and stuff, yeah, trellising and staking and stuff helps. But they do well in a semi-determinate, fashion, as well. So in a determinate.
What about
fashion,
pruning? How do you prune them, or don't you?
I don't prune these guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't prune these guys. So they go under my determinate rules, because I'm like, don't touch them, just leave them, because that's what they're gonna do. So that's why people are like, well, what do you do with them? I'm like, you can do either way. But don't prune them. If you prune them, they just get all weird. They just don't. Because they kind of have that determinate type set. So
right. And I stopped pruning pretty much all of last year, my non-long keepers, because this will be my first year with those. And it did not take away from production. In fact, it probably made it more so. And it did not take away from the fruit size, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think to each his own. I tend to not prune too many times during the season. I'll try to do on my longer indeterminates, obviously I'll do the underneath growth and everything and stuff too, but I'll just tend to let them kind of go up and up and up, and and kind of take out some things that are in the way of my rows and stuff like that. But we tend to get hot, and I tend to get a lot of scald if I prune out too much.
Okay, right, because you want to shade them.
You want to have a little cover, at least to have. I see some of these people that have, these trusses of tomatoes, and I think because they're not, the heirlooms and things and stuff too, because some of the heirlooms just the scald is just so bad on them. They do need a little cover too. So
what are your favorite varieties, Evan?
In general,
I know this is difficult to ask, because it's like asking your favorite child, but your favorite types.
Honestly, the Piennolo de Vesuvio is definitely one of my top 10. I mean, I don't think you can not. The yellow as well. Everybody who has those tomatoes is definitely like, these are some of the best tomatoes they've had.
Really?
Just because they're versatile. They have the ability to do canning. You can make sauce. You can fresh eat. They're not a sun gold. They're definitely not in that category, but they definitely have a very just very deep, rich flavor, almost like a mini Marzano with like flavor, so I feel like a lot of and there's regional types of the Vesuvios too, and so that's what's interesting is I have a couple different actual types that are from a couple different places, from Campania all the way over to and up and down that whole region there. And so it's really fun to have to explore kind of a little bit more into like the original names of some of these tomatoes and stuff too, and figure out like if you have some genetic ancestry to some region, is like kind of figure out what some of those tomatoes in that region are. And I'm not saying go over there and but when you go over there, if you see any seeds, find that tomato in that region, talk to that farmer too. So it's always fun to do that. I've been
compiling like a master resource sheet, which I like to do for Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap. And I've been working on like a master database for Longkeeper winter storage varieties. And it's like never ending, because I'm constantly finding out about new ones, but I'm also finding, different languages. They may refer to it as something different, but it's really the same variety. So it can be a bit mind boggling trying to come up with something that's not adequate, but
It's even,
accurate.
it's even,
accurate.
yeah, for sure. It's even crazier when you're there and they're telling you, no, this is its Serbian cousin, and this is from
Right,
Hungary.
right.
This is from, so I think the documentation and trying to keep it to its kind of respective place is really interesting, is because that regionality is really important to some of those places. We stayed at a wonderful place in Campania that was a very large production facility for plants, and so they basically get seeds from the government and they grow them out for plants for other farmers and things like that, and for people and things like that, because the plants are very kind of standardized when it comes to what they can grow. But this place happened to be a place that kind of was like in the underground seed network too, because they like the really interesting stuff, but they like some of the stuff that they have to grow, that the government says that this is what they can grow. And so it was fun to trade seeds with some of them and to see kind of the varieties that were, these are the ones that they're specifically have to grow, and these are the ones that they're trying to save. And
Right.
And they really like their red tomatoes in Italy, I have to say.
They do.
They weren't too
They really
excited
do.
in a lot of the other colors, as much as I can tell. The red tomatoes always won the tomato contest. So
Do the Longkeepers during storage, would you say they get more concentrated in flavor? I thought I had read that.
they definitely do. They definitely do a bit. Obviously, they're losing water content, and so they're kind of almost dehydrating if you keep them too long.
Right,
So,
right.
um,
Well, it's kind of
for
like
instance,
drying, basically, right? Like a sun-dried
yeah, I mean,
tomato.
for instance, you can, I don't know if I put this here. This is the Crispiana, but the Crispiana has, I can keep it still enough. It has, I can cut them open here.
Oh, that would
let
be
me run
great.
away and cut it. I'll cut one open. I have to grab a knife. I didn't prepare on doing this. Hold on.
Hey, gang, I guess because my Mac was running out of battery, I'm having trouble accessing the comments. If I do go off the air, I'll be back. I can do it on my iPad, but I'm trying to get to your comments so I can find out your questions. I did see a few, but I promise you, if I go off the air, I will be right back. Well, I think.
So this is 5 months.
Beautiful. That's
from the
5
Crispiana.
months.
5 months at the Crispiana. Obviously has a lot of, still a lot of gel content there.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it?
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's still, a lot going on there in terms of flavor and smell. I mean, it smells super great. And they stand. I mean, when you pick these, they're going to pick them, and they're very similar, like almost like if I've ever grown the egg from Phuket, which is a Thai tomato, and you pick them, and later on they'll get strawberry red. You pick them white,
Right.
and they'll
Right.
turn red and almost pink like a strawberry, and they'll have that. They kind of go from inside out ripening, it looks like, and so kind of the inside ripens before the outside, and the skin stays fairly tough, but they still have great usage for all kinds of things like that, stoops and stews, and but
Isn't there a variety called yellow out, red in? Isn't that a
Yes.
long variety? Yeah.
which is probably some of these, but these are originally traced to the areas and zones that they were grown. I think a lot of tomatoes are renamed once they were brought over.
Right.
It's like it's called yellow out and yellow in. I'm like, no, it's called Crispiana right there, and that's the name of the Italian.
Oh
Yeah, probably, or close to it. So this one is, this is the, can I balance it?
yeah. So that's more a pink. Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's your, this one's like pinkish, but this is Cane Torre. So this one is definitely more on the red spectrum. I'll take some pictures of these and post these as well too, so you can see them a little closer and clearer. I know video.
For those of you watching the recording, I just wanted to say this. It is January 16th today. So these tomatoes are what we're looking at, January 16th, and he's got these fresh tomatoes. So major perk in growing Longkeepers.
So here's Rosa de Benavento. It's hard to see. Let me put the camera down. It's easy.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
So Rosa de Benavento is probably one of my favorite. And when you ask like, what are your favorite types? This
Right.
just for overall versatility, long storage, versatility, taste. It still has the most amount of like actual like juice. Where'd it go? You know, an actual. It just looks
Yeah,
more put
I like
together.
seeds and goo. I find all the flavor to be in the seeds and goo.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that I mean, to me, it smells the best out of those three for Longkeepers. The Rosa also, you can have some that kind of fall under that 3-4 month range. Let me put that back up. There we go. So they'll fall under the 3-4 month range as well too. So you got to kind of, you always got to pick them out. You know, I have on the sheet pans. So these are all sitting on a sheet pan in my garage, and then I'll go through them and take out ones that go bad and things like that too, because you are going to have some deterioration throughout. But that Rosa is it's just gorgeous. The Rosa
It is.
yeah, yeah. The Rosa de Benavento probably definitely in top 10. It'd be
Yeah.
hard to say like Canestrino wouldn't be in my top 10 tomatoes too. Just but then there's like new stuff that comes in. Going to your question a couple minutes ago, the Rebel series of tomatoes.
I'm not aware of those.
The Rebel,
Oh, the
like the
Rebel,
Rebel
like
Starfighters,
Starfighter and all
the
that.
Rebel, all the Rebel
Yeah.
Starfighters, and those are
Right.
just really, at market, people are always very excited about things with like stripes, darker colored tomatoes, especially, and then people always love really good red tomatoes. So it's hard to,
Yeah.
I always try to find some, really good reds. Our best red is the Conare, the KNO. ARE, the Conare, which it's a Bulgarian tomato.
Konares.
Yeah, did I spell that
Yeah.
wrong? Probably. Yeah.
No, I think you said it right. I wish I could share.
Um,
My computer's freaking out on me, but Konare. I think I got that one from you.
Yeah, I don't have. I swear, I think if I have the most compliments about any tomato, it's that one because
Really?
everybody's like, "What?" It's just for like a fresh eater, like for the slicing it's the best beefsteak because it has. I feel like that 80-20 like perfect meat gel ratio, and it's
Right.
hard to get like that 80-20 where it's like you need a little bit, and when it's too much meat, it's like it's nice and stuff too, but I feel like there needs to be, it's like a steak with marbling. I don't know if we're offending any vegetarians here, but yeah,
I am actually a vegan, but you're not offending me.
But I feel like you have a good tomato with some good marbling and stuff too. It's kind of nice to have a good, really nice thick set with a tiny bit of marbling in it. So I think that's what you're always kind of looking for too. So
we have a request from my partner, Jen Joy. Want to do a taste test for us?
All right, I'll eat this one. I'll eat all of it. So
you've cut it open. You may as well.
So that's a Rosa de Benavento.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a little mealy, but it's still edible. In terms of like, you can even put that on a sandwich. at 5 months,
do it for a sandwich right now.
Right. I mean, it's, I would probably still cook with that one. I mean, I don't know. You could use it on a sandwich if you had a bunch of them. I think the 3-4 month tomatoes are a little more edible than the 5 month. When you start getting in here, January, February. This is the which one did I say this was? This is Cane Torre, and this one has that kind of 4-5 month storage. It's crunchy. It's not as mealy as the other one. It's just crunchy.
Does mealy come with storage, Evan? Is that something that?
No, mealy just comes with, I mean, just a longer, if it's just, just sitting around, I think some of these also are probably more in that, just we're in the longest point in the season. I think we're in the last couple of weeks of storage. We kind of go until about February 1st, and then a lot of these tomatoes I'm pretty much done with. So
okay.
We
I was
kept a
going to
lot
ask
of
you
this
what's the longest you've stored tomatoes? Is it early
I
February?
have a box from last season still, because I do the I'm not going to taste test those though, by the way. But I did save some because I was like, well, what happens if you just keep saving these? So it's still sitting in there. And there's like 8 or 10 of them that made it to like the bonus round, you know. So
What
I
are
don't
your
know
intentions?
I don't know I don't know what I'm going to do with those, but maybe those are the selection for ultimate storage. You know what I mean? You know, if you have try something that's going to last on over a year in storage. And this is Crispiana. I think Crispiana is probably. I mean, they all have good flavor. You know, they have the flavor component. It's the least mealy Crispiana. I think because those two can be kind of considered in the 3-4 month range. Crispiana has like the best. Like I'd keep eating this. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it has the best flavor. It tastes like a tomato, just like you would buy from, you know, anywhere. It's I'd say it's a little, you know, it's definitely less. I mean, less flavorful than your summer heirloom. I mean,
Of course, yeah.
you're not getting that kind of umami kind of flavor out of it.
Right.
But
Like,
flavor wise, I mean, I think the breakdown with the other two probably would have been better like a month ago because we were eating those in the 3-4 month range, and then the Crispiana kind of is like the longest. I have the most of those left, and chefs have been using those still right now. And so that was kind of our project here is also to use some of these tomatoes in that long storage type, but also if chefs can use them and where they can use them in the kitchen too. So we're going to get a lot more feedback this year in terms of what they can be used for. Because traditionally we have to find stuff that fits into our palate that it might work with. Obviously soups, but I think there might be some other. You could use the Crispiana in a salad just because it's so crunchy. It has that textural kind of element that you're looking for there too. So.
And honestly, when we're getting to January, February, I'm thinking any tomato lover is not going to be super picky. If it's not optimal, it's still going to be what you get in the grocery store.
So when I was in my trips to Italy, I remember being in the one of the on Google Translate. I don't speak Italian, unfortunately, but on Google Translate, knocking on people's doors trying to find some of these Arcatase tomatoes, and I found them in stores. I found them hanging on shelves in all kinds of different places. But one of my favorite places was going into like a grandmother's garage. And she was like, like, come here. And she shows me like this 5 or 6 ragu tins or like these large lasagna pans where they make the ragu and all this stuff. And then so they're all tomatoes stored in her garage kind of in the Campania region. And so I just think they keep food because they're some of the older or times they're used to having to do a lot of food storage for reasons and having to figure out how to put some of these things up for times and things like that too. And we get away from some of that now.
It wasn't necessarily for the tomato obsessed crazy people that we are in TLC or whatever. These were for food storage. Right. My producer from Tomato Talk Live popped in to save me with the comments. Thanks. So Michael, thank you. I didn't even ask him to, but he did just pull up a comment a minute ago. I believe, I don't know if you can pull that up again, Michael. Here, are Longkeepers good for sun drying flavor wise?
Yeah, so we were talking about that earlier a little bit with the Principe Borghese and the Borgo Solano. So some of those 2 to 3 month storage types, specifically those two, I think are traditionally used for sun drying. So those ones specifically, they tend to, like I said, they have a little bit thicker skin and kind of have that ability to do what you want with them, but still have not a lot of water content and a nice little cavity of meat and that. So, but they are on that same pointed kind of category of those. They'll look like the piennolos. And, if you try to do the drying with the piennolos, you're not going to have the same as you would with the Borgo or the Principe because of, I think, the amount of water content in the Vesuvio versus the Borgo has a little more water versus less. So you're looking at just so.
I kind of touched on this before you came on and through my research, which is very, I'm a newbie too, but I'm trying to learn as much as possible and translating a lot of Italian sites as well. But is it my understanding? So piennolo and ramlet or ramele, those basically are words for hanging. Am I right about that? Doesn't piennolo mean hanging in Italy?
Yes. It means
Yes.
hanging. Yes. Yeah.
And then in Spain, they have Ramlet,
Right.
Enjar, Colgar. Those basically are the same thing, as far
Right.
as you know? Yes. Okay.
So
And those
and
beans.
so I think I've heard this a lot before from others too. And obviously, if you think about how tomatoes circumvented our globe, they definitely were moved around and brought to one place, and definitely that pointed variety seemingly arrives sometime in that region of Italy and that lower Spanish Portuguese kind of realm there, because you will see some of that pointed tomato
Right.
throughout some of those regions, going over to Serbia and Croatia, some of the other side as well. You'll see some of those pointed region tomatoes. So I think you can trace some of that genetic gene, and then they'll establish their own little bit of regionality through a few hundred years, and then you have something that's a little thicker skin. They do this traditionally with it in terms of over here versus over here, and so when you find those like the Borgo or the Principe and use them for drying, you'll see that I have one that looks like the Piennolo del Vesuvio, but it's called Tondo Cone, and it's
I got that
definitely
from
not.
you just because the name sounded cool.
But it's not a storage tomato, and it
Oh, is
looks
it not?
identical. No, but I mean, not really. I mean, you could store it a little bit, but it's more like a bruschetta, or like they would actually like eat these because they're fatter and their water content is huge. They have
Okay.
like a lot more water in them. So obviously, if you're going to dry or if you're going to hang, you don't want something that's a big fat tomato that's full of water
Right.
that's going to just rot out there. So
Yeah, I'm looking for your picture of this on your website. Your pictures
and
are just
I'll give you guys a big tomato picture drop here. I have a whole bunch of fun pictures, and I had a PowerPoint, but we couldn't figure out how to put that into here. But yeah, I could always put the Italian PowerPoint up somewhere too as well.
That'd be fabulous. This is the Tondo Cone pizza. So it sort of looks like a pianola, which is
the little nipple as well, but it's definitely a lot wider, and those won't make it past 2 months. No way. I mean, you might be able to store. You can store those. Those store like better than your normal tomato. Like you can get a month out of those. And they redden up and they're nice, but after a month, you're looking at, you have to make sauce already with them because they're very, so you can tell they're from that same kind of family of tomatoes, right? Where you have that ability to, hold, but not have, so they probably have I think it's like the delayed fruit deterioration, where they're basically not deteriorating, but they definitely don't have like a long shelf life phenotype, because those have that are more like the Crispiana or some of the other ones that I've kind of talked about here. So.
Good to know. Michael wants to know, are there any dwarf Longkeepers yet? I know you mentioned they hover around 4 feet, or many of them hover around 4 feet.
Brad's Mini Marzano was that one. I mean, that one, the Marzanos, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a Longkeeper, but it's that's.
Are you talking about the micro dwarf? Is that what you're talking about?
I think it's a micro dwarf.
Right. Yeah, that one's.
That's the only one I've seen it, I guess, in the Italian category yet. But that'd be kind of fun to make some of these into some of those other crazy little.
It would. It would. In fact, you talking about Longkeepers reminds me a bit of my micro dwarf obsession. I've got an obsession with a lot of things, but Jarson tomatoes I told you about, micro dwarfs, and now Longkeepers. I need them all. I will never in my lifetime be able to grow them all, but I need them all. But I think Michael's referring to like actual dwarf, which is like between around 2 to 5 feet. But it seems like what you're telling me, they're kind of around 4 feet anyway, most of them.
Right. I would consider these all in that semi, I call, like I said, a semi-determinate, category, where they will have a little bit of size to them, because the structure of the plant is just a little bit longer spaced out. If you look at the, where, the spacing of the internodes are in the plant, they're definitely, but they won't outgrow, they're not going to outpace like an indeterminate, like they're going to have a capped size. But they have probably 2 production runs on them.
Okay.
So you're going to have one. You're going to see one set. You're going to see a second set, and then they're going to, kind of die off. So.
Lisa Nelson says, looking forward to growing some of Evan's Italian collection this year.
there's some good stuff in there. So I feel like the Italians are always on my top 10 just because the flavor characteristics within the Italians is so much richer than, some of the others. Yeah, I mean, seriously, it's just, there's so many different flavor profiles within a tomato. I think that's what kind of made me fall in love with tomatoes, is because buying tomatoes, what I grew up with was, my dad buying a tomato from the store, and, it's not good,
No,
and
it's not. I leave
everybody's,
Phil in here says store tomatoes are red styrofoam.
yeah, I mean, that's what made me think
They
of that.
are.
But it's definitely a fact that, when people ask, do you like tomatoes? And I'm like, no, not really. I'm like, I like my tomatoes. I'm like,
Right.
there's a difference between,
There's a big difference.
tomatoes and, like, because everybody's, I mean, I think what comes to mind is everybody says my tomatoes at the farmer's market or wherever, they look like homegrown tomatoes. Like, even so, they're just, I don't know, just the way they look, the way they smell, the amount of fuzz on the tomato and the actual
Right.
fuzz on the vine that you harvested, high on the truss, and it's like this full encapsulation of 2 tomatoes that are fully ripe. And
Yeah.
you just don't get that. You don't go to the store and see, I mean, you'll see tomatoes on the vine from the Canadian greenhouse tomatoes, and then you'll see
Right.
Mexican grown heirlooms that are, whatever. I'm talking now.
Right.
So what you're limited to is producing some of these at home, so you can kind of figure out how to store your piennolos and hang them for that 2 to 3 month range. Use them up sparingly, like start using them. I think a lot of people, when I started selling these to people, they would kind of hang them up and put them up like pepper rosettes like you'd get in Santa Fe, and then as a decoration, and then not use them.
I know. I feel like I'd be afraid to use them. Like, what if I need them for something? But
yeah, but
I
you
can guarantee you,
pick a
everybody
couple and put them
watching
in a
this.
pasta. Yeah, I think traditionally you'd see them made with pasta and taken down, and the chef would take 2 or 3 of these down and burst them open in a pasta dish, while they're sautéing and things like that. Like I said earlier, the bruschetta, spread on bruschetta with some anything, what do you call the tonada, and the fish, the fermented fish or whatever and stuff. So there's a lot of good ways you can prepare some of these tomatoes late in the season. Obviously adding some more flavor to them and characteristics to, you need a good olive oil, and you need some good herbs. You need other things too to make that flavor kind of come out too as well. So,
and I know the Spanish Ramlet tomatoes. They're big on a nice bread. The tomato, they spread the tomato on the bread, right, with some olive oil and herbs, maybe, which sounds just heavenly. But I can guarantee you, everybody watching live right now in the middle of January is so jealous that you have that bowl of tomatoes right now.
Well, that's the whole point was to, I really want to get people excited about learning about also, like, it's you have to know, like, what tomatoes are those. So the piennolos and the corbarinos, the corbarino is really nice for, like, the sauce tomato that you're going to keep for like a month or two. Like, you want to store like a bunch of these up and make sauce over, like, because you don't get impounded with, the next 20 crates of tomatoes within 1 week type thing. So that's the corbarino. The piennolo, the yellow and the red are definitely for the hanging, and for the eating fresh as fast as you can, sparingly, right?
Right.
I know it's an oxymoron, but and then the Borgo Solano and the Principe Borghese are the ones that I would do for drying, just because the skin and everything's a little bit better. The Rosa de Benavento, I ate here, and those are the 3 to 4, 4 to 4. Like I said, you have to go through your tomatoes to make them last more than 4 months sometimes, because they have to pick out. I've already gone through, about a month ago, I went through and picked out some bad ones out of my sheet racks, and was able to do that. It helps to store. I always store the tomatoes on the sheet racks. Also, I should add, on a sheet of unbleached newspaper ply with no writing on it. Like, go get like a box of just unbleached
like the
paper.
stuff that's packing paper or whatever.
Right, without any writing or any ink or anything on it, and then just store them actually on the sheet tray, because then if you have any bleed from, if you have one tomato that decides to go south, it's not affecting your whole your whole
And
thing. So,
stem down, Evan, like I would
no, these
normally.
ones,
No?
all the little guys, I mean, they're all the ones that are still on trusses are just kind of scattered about. And the stem doesn't really matter with all the round late season ones. I've stored the piennolos in, in a box, together, kind of like, as long as there's not pressure on any of them. I think tomatoes don't like any individual pressure that you ever put on them, whether if you're in the field or in storage.
Right.
If you put a tomato on top of tomato, you know what happens, but
Right.
especially leaving it there. So, but then, those are pretty much your, I think your top, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably top 8 storage tomatoes. And I have a few other ones in there too that are really good too, but yeah.
You sound amazing. I know you grow a lot personally for your farm, but the average home grower like me, how many varieties would be, or how many plants would be enough, do you think, to, have a good supply of storage Longkeeper tomatoes?
Depending on your season too. I mean, like I said, you want to make sure to, if anything, harvest storage tomatoes earlier, and then make sure to have, because if you're going to get a rain and you're going to lose all those ones that look, like, because some of the storage tomatoes like Crisana, they don't ripen up like a normal tomato. So you're going to have to harvest them in the field, like almost like rock hard. So, you can have, a few different plants of each of those, I think, like, you get your piennolos and then your corbarinos, and then you get through those. So a couple plants of each of those. It depends on how many tomatoes you eat too.
I eat a lot of
You can
tomatoes.
always sauce stuff. So, I mean, minimally, I think, I don't know, that's a hard question. I eat a lot of tomatoes, make a lot of sauce.
Satya says you're going to limit yourself, Lauren. You know me well.
A couple plants of each will get you, because then you'll have your, you have one of each, which is probably at least a sheet tray or two. I'd say Corborino and Rosa de Benavento are the most highly productive out of those. I tend to see Piennolo and the Giallo, which is the yellow version, be kind of medium production. Cane Torres, kind of medium production. Crispianas, medium to high production. But they, like I said, they're not producing 25 pounds per plant for sure.
Right.
They're definitely in that, but they're not a novelty either. So you're definitely going to get 10 pounds maybe per plant. I don't know, something like that, along those lines.
Evan has an entire category of specialty Italian tomatoes, and the ones you're talking about today can be found in there, right, Evan?
Yeah. Oh, and there's Cane Torre. That's a picture we took actually in, if you go back up, that one right there. That's a picture we took in, I think it was Lecce, probably one of the towns we visited on the eastern side. I need to blow that one up, but it has a beautiful, it's just a super, they actually take these tomatoes and they string them up individually. So some of these aren't done, like they'll actually take each truss or each tomato and hang them up individually through like cotton yarn and stuff. It's really crazy.
It's beautiful.
So, I'll put some pictures on the site today too. I feel like I need to have more gallery pictures in there of all of some of my trips and stuff like that too. I don't ever put that on the website or anything like that. For some reason, I need to always put more stuff on it. There's the hanging Vesuvius, the yellow. Yeah. That was at the Baker Creek Expo.
Really?
A few years back. That was down in Santa Rosa.
So cool.
Where we have the yellow and the red, which is really fun. You can make those things huge. I mean, those could be, enormous trusses, and you can literally eat off that thing for, months and months. So,
and that's where our member Kit had shared a video for doing this, the one from Sweden. And, I was like, what is this? I need to know about this. And I'm not alone. Obviously, the group has been very curious about it. There isn't a whole lot of information out there.
Can you click on that picture so you can see it better?
Having you on has been terrific.
If you click, does it click? No.
Yep, it does.
There we go.
There we go.
So you can see, we harvested about 75% ripe. Like you could still leave some little green ones on there and stuff. So throughout this season, basically when you're you talked about when do I harvest and stuff. So,
Right.
and when do I plant? I mean, you definitely, if you planted one early and one late, you can definitely eat some and then have some for, earlier storage. So going into, depending on where you are, like let's say late, in December to January, you have some for December would be the first ones you harvested, and then January would be the second ones you harvested.
Okay.
And then also depending on how many bugs and things you have eating at things too. So
I'm
you,
glad you brought that up, because
yeah,
Michael asked, do they not attract bugs, flies when they're hanging out in the open?
they don't, because you don't want to put any up there that are splitting. If you put any up there that are splitting because you had a big rain the night before, and half of those are like have cracks and everything, they have a very nice, really nice skin that really doesn't attract any flies or anything, because nothing is burst. I mean, that's why I said you harvest about 75% before they're over. You don't want to harvest something that's way overripe. I think it's really important not to harvest super overripe stuff, because then it's not going to have a tendency to store. So if you want to plant and move that up in your schedule a little bit and plant a little later, it's not going to hurt it. But if you have a shorter season, obviously just plant, like I was saying, when you want to plant normally, and just harvest in your season when you can. Because if you have a lot of, like I said, predatory stuff that's eating your plants, or blights or things or whatever, that you want to get those tomatoes out when you can. So.
Right, sure. So pick about half ripe. Is that what you said? When to harvest?
75%. 75%. Yeah. The Crispianas don't look ripe at all. Like they'll never get ripe when you pick them. They're literally like ping pong balls. So if you ever, like I said, the Thai from Phuket, they're almost hard, because they're meant to be culinarily a tomato for stir fry. And so when you see some of the tomatoes culinarily, they're used for so they don't break down too heavily. So they're actually crunchy, like peppers would be inside a stir fry or something like that. So I don't think they do that with the Crispiana. I think it's more, but I think that could be explored. I think that's something that is fun to research a little bit more too, which I'm going to hopefully come out with a little bit more research on some of these in the next couple of years too. So it's always on my radar to get more of these and find more of these and explore more than this.
And it would benefit the tomato community for you to do so too. Your varieties are terrific.
Thank you.
Evan from Heirloom Seedhouse and Portland Seedhouse. His website is at portlandseedhouse.com. I guess you said heirloomseedhouse.com also takes you to your website.
Yeah, they're both my Heirloom Seedhouse is our seed company, and Portland Seedhouse is when we have our farmers markets and our stuff here in Portland. So
I did a vendor spotlight on him in Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap. In fact, he was generous enough to offer our group really nice coupon code a few months ago. So if you're not in my group, Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap on Facebook, please join us. But I also show the reason why I bring up that I did a vendor spotlight on you is you give a lot of seeds in your packets, quite a few. I don't know if you have a specific number, but at least 25, I would say, in most of them.
Yeah, we put at least 25 in there, and some of them are a little more limited, so we'll put just exactly 25, and then obviously some we have we'll harvest a bunch of, and so I just want to make sure to get them out there, and
Great.
Everybody can have more seeds is better. I feel like,
more seeds is better.
I always feel like that's a whole nother conversation too, is if people want less seeds and offer, for less, you can do like, 10 seeds and offer it for like $2 or something like that. But as the packing of seeds is also a whole nother crazy thing is, as a small regional seed company, I don't, have huge, multi-million-dollar packing machines to fill, I literally have a couple friends that come over and we pack a ton of seeds. And so.
Well, I really honor what you do. And thank you so much for spending our 15 minutes talking about Longkeepers with us. Thanks so much for educating us, and for, I sure got a lot of questions answered, and I know our audience seemed to really enjoy it too. So gang, make sure you visit his website, and you will find his great varieties, seed sales. I know he ships pretty quickly. And then look for him in Tomato Lovers Collective and Swap. Also,
and
anything
also
you want to add about Longkeeper?
Yeah, a lot of we're on Instagram too, Heirloom Seedhouse. So you can look up a lot of pictures on there too as well. Great. I feel like most of the the stuff I tend to post on Instagram and then just goes to Facebook too. But
Right.
yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff. I have Farmer Evan on there too as well on Instagram too. But yeah,
Great.
say hi.
Well, Evan, thank you so much. This has been
Sure.
fantastic.
Yeah, we'll chat about more stuff. There's so many different topics. I feel like I tried to keep it to one, one topic here. But
Yeah.
if you just try to stick with your different wonderful varieties and keep them stored right. I think storage is the biggest thing. Was what trying to figure out your storage and eating times behind some of the things. So
Yeah. Well, this has been great, and being able to see them live and in person, and you opening them up and even tasting, has been terrific, invaluable. So thanks,
sure.
Evan. Thanks so much for being with us and getting out there watching live. Thank you so much for watching. Michael, thank you for joining in and saving the day on my comments. And I will see you next time. Thanks again, Evan. Bye, gang.
Excellent. Talk to you
Peace
soon.
and love. Get your gratitude on.
Bye.